You're listening to Richie Allen on the UK's biggest independent news radio show. Have your say by tweeting at Richie Allen Show now.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. US President Donald Trump says he'll sign an executive order to suspend all immigration to the US because of the coronavirus outbreak. He said on Twitter the move would be temporary, but it comes as some US states start to reopen their economies. Vice President Mike Pence says there are signs of progress.
Every day, the American people are one day closer to ending the coronavirus in our nation and reopening this country.
The number of people dying from coronavirus in England and Wales is significantly higher than the government's official figures from hospitals suggest, according to new data. Holly Hudson reports.
This is the latest offering from the Office for National Statistics. Its weekly report is now widely anticipated as it takes into account deaths outside hospitals in care homes and private homes. It found that 13,121 deaths involving COVID-19 have occurred in England and Wales up to the 10th of April and registered up to the 18th of April, which is 41% higher than the 9,288 people who died in UK hospitals during the same period, reported by the Department of Health. The report also revealed deaths overall have hit a 20-year high. The figures have been labelled sad and shocking, with Britain's opposition party Labour saying they were only scratching the surface of the emerging crisis in social care. Holly Hudson, London.
Coronavirus cases in Russia have topped 50,000 after another surge of more than 5,000 new cases. But as Dan Ashby reports from Moscow, authorities are looking for signs of light.
More than 400 dead, and now nearly 50,000 cases. The days of President Vladimir Putin saying coronavirus is under control are long gone. Moscow authorities warn this is the fortnight of peak morbidity, with kilometre-long ambulance queues and a scramble to create more beds. On Monday, one medical research company told us only a quarter of doctors say they have enough personal protective equipment, but the health department insists its doctors are fine. Dan Ashby, Moscow.
There's mixed reporting that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may be seriously ill. Last week, he didn't appear at events marking his grandfather and North Korean founder Kim Il-sung's birthday. South Korea, however, has denied the reporting, insisting it's seen nothing to suggest he's seriously unwell. Bruce Harrison reports from our bureau in Seoul.
South Korea's presidential office says it has no information that would confirm the news reports about Kim's health, and no unusual trends have been identified inside the north. CNN and a South Korean-based outlet called Daily NK have both reported Kim Jong-un underwent surgery. CNN cited a U.S. official saying Kim may be in grave danger after the procedure.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
It's the BBG, not the BBC. You're listening to the Richie Allen Radio Show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester.
Where the sun is still shining, can you believe it? Can you, Adam and Eve it? It's glorious here in the great city of Salford. Welcome to Tuesday's Richie Allen Radio Show. It is the 21st of April 2020. I am the BBG, and I've got two brilliant guests lined up for you today. I'll tell you more about them in a minute. Oakley dokely. Let's get on with the programme then. Do tweet it. It's at Richie Allen Show. Tweet the programme right now. Look forward to hearing from you. Look forward to it.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Now, in each hour of the programme today, I will be joined by an eminent physician, academic, eminently qualified woman. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny will be live on the programme in around about 20 minutes' time. Just underneath that, I'll give you her resume before we introduce her. Very qualified lady. Dr. Judy Mikovits in hour 2. Biochemistry, molecular biology, author. We'll talk to her. Today, the programme is very coronavirus-centric. The response to coronavirus. We're going to get alternative opinions. Because that's what we do. We get alternative opinions. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, Dr. Judy Mikovits, live on the Richie Allen Radio Show today. Good afternoon to you. The Queen is 94 today. She is. Never had a vaccine. Never had a vaccine, the Queen. Nope. No prescription drugs either. Nope. Good on you, Queenie. Now, Carlsberg the great Danish beer brewer, the great brewer Carlsberg, doesn't do sycophantic, vomit-inducing, cringe-worthy tributes. But if it did, it would sound a bit like this. Here's Talk Radio's Mike Graham.
Before we get started, we wish to note that it is the Queen's birthday, where she has turned 94 years of age. And as ever, the Queen has got it absolutely spot on. She has judged the mood of the nation, and she has told everyone that she does not want them to celebrate her birthday. She does not want a 21-gun salute in St James's Park. She does not want there to be banners flown. She does not want to have the red arrows flying over Buckingham Palace. And
the ungrateful bitch.
And she certainly doesn't want anyone out on the streets tonight clapping on her behalf. And you know what? She's absolutely right, because the mood of the nation would suggest that even though we love the Queen, even though we really respect the Queen, and even though we would love to celebrate her birthday, this time around we're just not going to do it. So on this show, we are not going to be playing the national anthem. You have every right, if you wish to wish her a happy birthday when you call in, and you can say whatever you want. But I just want to tell you this. The Queen is definitely the backbone of this nation. The Queen is absolutely and utterly the correct judge of the mood of this country, and she represents everything that is good about this country. So I'm going to say happy birthday, Your Majesty, and let it end at that.
Yes, that's the Ministry of Truth right there, Talk Radio. Sounding increasingly like the Ministry of Truth all the way through this coronavirus nonsense. Even the Queen, when she heard that, said, "Michael, please pull your tongue out of my arse, old son." Of course, the Queen is spending her birthday in the usual manner, in the giant terrarium known as Buckingham Palace. She'll curl up later on and watch EastEnders with a bowl of flies and crickets before getting the strap-on out for Philip. Vaudeville. And it gets even worse every day for 2 weeks now. I know some of you don't believe this. You think it's an exaggeration. You think the BBG likes to be melodramatic. No. Every day for 2 weeks now, every Sky News show, every one of them, has taken to reading out the random names of some folk who have allegedly died of coronavirus. Think about it. Kind of like they would do when the country is at war. They would name fallen British soldiers. Right? Listen to this. This is from this afternoon. It's happening for the last 2 weeks on every Sky News show. This is Jane Secker on Sky Today. Yeah.
Tens of thousands of coronavirus patients, as we've just been hearing, have died in hospital across the UK, and many others have passed away at home and in care homes. People like 71-year-old Unmar Afzal, who was a former Home Office translator and died at home, so will not be included in official figures for coronavirus deaths. Also, 56-year-old Kate Fox. She was a teacher of more than 20 years. The head of the school that she taught said that she was much loved and respected by her students and colleagues.
This is the national broadcaster now.
Also, 57-year-old Thomas Harvey, who worked as a healthcare assistant at North East London NHS Foundation Trust.
Wow.
It's understood that the father of 7 contracted the virus after treating a patient with the disease on his ward.
It's understood that Corporal Smith was returning from an operation near Helmand province and stepped on a fucking landmine. Right?
Also,
this is a national broadcaster reading out the names of random people who have died of coronavirus. She said tens of thousands of people have died of it in hospital. That's not true. Do you know anybody who's died of it in hospital? I don't. And I know a lot of people.
It's being paid today to Manjit Singh Rayat, who was the first Sikh to work as an A&E consultant in the UK.
Wow.
He was described as enormously valued and widely respected. Speaking to Sky News, Dr. Rayat's cousin said that he was the most generous man you could ever meet.
And then?
The volatility in global oil markets is...
Yeah, let's talk about the price of oil then. Vaudeville. Tens of thousands dying, she said. Pretty soon there'll be ads in every regional newspaper in this country. Are there any regional newspapers left? Not really. Oh, you've got the Liverpool Echo, Richie, and the Manchester Evening News. Yeah, they're not regional newspapers anymore. Oh, no. No, they're owned by conglomerates. But in these so-called regional newspapers, pretty soon we will have advertisements seeking dead collectors. Not debt collectors, not money, dead collectors to get the festering, rotting corpses off the streets, if you believe the UK media.
Bring out your dead!
Yeah. Bring out your dead.
Bring out your dead!
I think I could do that. I've got the voice for it. Bring out your dead. Big silly Irish accent. Bring out your dead. How are you, Mrs. Hennessy? How many of you today, love? 2. Both coronavirus, are they? Yes, good. On the back of the wagon now, love. On the back of the wagon. How are you, Mrs. Murphy? Just 1 today, I see. Mr. Murphy. Coronavirus? No. No, you kicked him in the balls and he had a heart attack? Yes, okay. Up on the wagon with him. Up on the wagon. Bring out your dead. Speaking of the Black Death, the leader of the House of Commons, Jacob Rees-Mogg, invoked it today in Westminster because Parliament is back, kind of. There were a few MPs in there, just a few, and 100 more or so chipped in on Zoom, which is an online program, video conferencing. Yes, this is the way of it. Here's Jacob Rees-Mogg. Here's Moggy himself invoking the Black Death.
As the rest of the country sees its ability to do more become apparent, so we must be going along with that. And he kindly leads me perfectly to the point at which I want to end. What we do in this House is not something that it is nice to do, a frippery, a bauble on the British Constitution. It is the British Constitution. It is at the essence of how our governmental and constitutional system works. The ability to hold the government to account, the ability to seek redress of grievance, the ability to take up those matters brought to us by our constituents so that they may be put right, is best done when this House sits. In 1349, when the Black Death affected this country, Parliament couldn't sit, and didn't. The session was cancelled. Thanks to modern technology, even I have moved on from 1349, and I'm glad to say that we can sit to carry out these fundamental constitutional functions. And I'm enormously grateful to many who are just as traditionalist as I am, who have accepted these constraints, and you, Mr. Speaker, who compete with me to be a traditionalist, I sometimes think. You, Mr. Speaker, have been at the forefront in getting them to happen, because Parliament, the House of Commons, is essential to how we are governed.
Yeah. I mentioned Oxford University yesterday. A guy called Carl Heenahan. Great Irish surname that, Heenahan. Lovely. Nearly as good as Hanrahan or Hanratty. Great names. Now, Carl Heenahan is director of the Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine, and he's a practicing GP. So he's a big cheese. He's a huge cheese in academia. And he told the Daily Mail yesterday, basically, wait for it, that the pandemic has peaked and the draconian lockdown measures are unnecessary. But he also said they were unnecessary to begin with. He said the impact of the lockdown was going to outweigh the damaging effect of the virus. Clearly he said that yesterday. Didn't need to have the lockdown at all, and its impact would far outweigh the effect of the virus, he said. And yes, the BBC did bring him on. I posed that question yesterday. Would the UK's evening news media, would they reach out to Professor Heenahan? Well, Newsnight did, and he spoke to Emily Maitlis. Here he is, Carl Heenahan.
Well, it's never going to be clear until we start doing the antibody testing, and we could do that on a random sample of people in somewhere like London to get a real sense of how many people actually had the disease. And what we'll see when we do that is we'll understand the proportion that had it. But we've got to do comparisons with countries like Sweden, who've had a different strategy here, and really think through to what extent is lockdown a feasible strategy, when actually if you'd have done some of the things a bit earlier, like not having the mass participation events, reduced them, you could have actually possibly got away without the lockdown. The problem is the pressure from the media, the global pressure, has really forced every country into this position. We'll only truly know the answer when we come out of this, to actually look back and go, look, was that actually a strategy? What we need to do now is really focus on getting out as quick as we got in.
But you mentioned Sweden.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned Sweden, says Emily Maitlis. She didn't want to go there. She didn't want to go to the part of his answer where he talked about the media fear-mongering. Oh, no. let's skip over that.
That hasn't been, from what we've seen so far, and I understand we're not at the end yet, that hasn't been a successful outlier. Its death rates are 3 times the combined rate of its Nordic neighbours. So I don't know what we're learning from that, other than we did something that was better.
Yeah, so when you make comparisons to countries like Norway, you're looking at completely different structural population. You could compare it with Belgium, where it's much worse. So you can play that sort of movements around of looking from one and an answer to the other. The question now is that have you got the confidence, or are you going to be so cautious that actually you're going to hold back until it's particularly certain? There are 2 important issues that are happening here. One is, it seems to me the public has completely lost confidence in healthcare. So I'm completely concerned that people are not engaging with healthcare in the proper way.
What do you mean? Sorry, what do you mean they've lost confidence with healthcare? That they're listening to scientists, they're listening to what we're being told, aren't we?
Well, anecdotally, people are not engaging with general practice. They're not engaging with healthcare in hospitals for the normal conditions that we normally see. Healthcare and some of the aspects, anecdotally, I worked this weekend in general practice out of hours. I've never had a shift that was so quiet in 20 years.
Yes, maybe one of the intended consequences of all of this madness, maybe. People staying at home, not going out, not going to their local surgery, not going to accident and emergency when they need to, not going for their important appointments and all the rest of it. Amazed the BBC brought him on. Carl Heenahan, professor from Oxford University, as I said, the director of the Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine and a practicing GP as well there. Right, it is time to get my first guest on. So let's do that. While I get her on, here's David Bowie and Young Americans on the Richie Allen Radio Show for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. Glorious day in the northwest of the UK. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny is live on the radio with me in a couple of minutes' time. Anything you'd like to contribute, do it on Twitter. It's at Richie Allen Show. Back in 3 minutes. Right, music from David Bowie, Young Americans even on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Tuesday's programme. Unseasonable weather here in the northwest of the UK. Beautiful afternoon. I keep saying it because the more I say it, it might just hang around for another few days. Maybe there's one good thing to come out of this lunatic lockdown scenario, that we can at least get a bit of vitamin D and a bit of sun. Let me introduce my first guest, no stranger to my audience, and I don't mean because she's been on this programme before. She's got an enormous following, a hugely respected physician and an expert in the field of integrative medicine. She campaigns tirelessly for free choice in health care, including the right for people to refuse vaccination. She's spoken on these subjects around the world. We've spoken to her on occasion over the years when people have tried to prevent her from speaking in places like Australia. I want to draw your attention, in case you are new to Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, to the website Vaxter.com. That's VAXXTER.com. Sign up for the email list there to get information. I'll put links out to where you can find Sherri on Twitter and on Instagram as well. But let's just welcome her back to the programme. Great pleasure to welcome back Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. Sherri, thanks for coming back on our show. How are you?
I'm great, Richie. Thanks for the invite. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, it's about time you were back on the programme. Let me ask you this, as an accredited academic expert in your field, how does it make you feel when somebody like Bill Gates goes on the BBC and claims to be a health expert, uses phrases and speaks in sentences like, well, I and other health experts believe that we can get this vaccine out really quick and quicker than normal, so long as countries are prepared to indemnify the vaccination company makers. There has to be a trade-off. How does somebody, a qualified woman like you, feel when somebody like Gates claims to be a health expert?
It just goes along with the whole rest of the gamut who claims to be health experts, Richie. Fauci and Birx and all the people at the NIH, the CDC, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, Gavi. They know nothing about health. They know all about causing and treating disease. And so that's kind of like the whole program here. It's like, and when you listen to all of these conversations, all these press releases and everything that we've been hearing for a while now, there's no discussion about health. I mean, they're all talking about run out and get tested to see if you have this virus. Well, these coronaviruses have been around. There's 36 of them, and they've been around for 60 years. So what are they really testing for? Something that you may have been exposed to somewhere in your lifetime? Are they really testing for this new SARS-CoV-2 virus that's out there floating around that now they think there's 8 different versions of it because it's an RNA virus? They're not talking about, why don't you go out and get your vitamin D tested and make sure that it's therapeutic, that your vitamin D level is somewhere between 80 and 100. Go out and make sure that your vitamin K level is appropriate. Make sure you're taking at least 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C ascorbates every day. We don't ever talk about health. We just talk about drugs and vaccines.
Drugs and vaccines. You might be happy to learn, and you might already know this, but Carl Heenahan, who is basically the director of the Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine at Oxford University and is a practicing GP, he's broken ranks. He's left the herd, and he is beginning to say that the lockdown was unnecessary. We shouldn't have done it. He said the so-called pandemic peaked back in March in this country, and he went on to say that the effects of the lockdown itself the negative effects would far outweigh the alleged damaging effects of coronavirus. That's a positive thing that he's gotten a bit of airtime. He's had a platform. Do you agree with him that there was no need for the lockdown, and that that the lockdown itself could do terrible damage to people?
I'm in total agreement with that. And it's what I've been saying from the very beginning. When people would ask me, what do you think? I said, you just watch. Just watch. In fact, I wrote an article about it called Same Playbook, Different Virus. I mean, we did it with SARS. We did it with bird flu. We did it with H1N1 swine flu. Now we're doing it with this SARS-CoV-2 virus that we're calling COVID. We're calling the disease COVID-19. I said, it's going to be a complete nothing burger. We're going to crash the entire global economy, which is going to be so much more worse than any of this is. And my biggest concern about what they have done here, Richie, is that they put a template in place now that every time, are we going to see this every flu season now? Yeah. That, flu's coming, and oh my gosh, everybody needs to put on masks and put on gloves and stay home and board up your businesses because could be a really bad one. Or if they created a template to put the world into crisis and bring us economically to our knees whenever they feel like it. That's a really big concern.
What do you think? Do you think that's likely that they will say, as we get to the summer, maybe autumn, they might say, okay, we've had phase 1 of the virus, now we've got phase 2, we'll have to introduce social distancing and we'll have to close some businesses again. Do you see that as being a real possibility ongoing?
I think it's a real possibility unless we stop it. Unless enough people stand up and enough people with authority, with big credentials, like the gentleman you just mentioned from Oxford. I know that the gentleman from Sweden, who's like head of their public health department there, and they've looked at the Swedish situation when they didn't lock people down and what the death rate is there. I mean, the stated death rate globally right now is somewhere around 0.2% of those infected. And we will never, ever know the true death rate because we will not ever know clearly what the denominator is. I mean, if 100 people die and 1,000 people were sick, that's a 10% death rate, and that's pretty significant. Yeah. But if 100 people die and a million people or 10 million people were infected with the virus, many of them had mild illness, many of them not even sick enough to go to the doctor, then that makes that 100 people that died a 0.000 something percent.
Now let me throw something at you that your detractors, those who disagree with you, it's a bit childish, but they say, I see you getting criticised for this because you're very well known, you have a huge following, and you're very respected. When you talk, and I'm very sympathetic to what you're saying, even though I'm not qualified, but I'm sympathetic to what you're saying. People say to you and other physicians like you, they say, well, to hell with the old. Is that right, Dr. Tenpenny? So some frail and elderly people might die. To hell with it. They accuse you of saying that. I don't think you are saying that, but that's what you get accused of. Is that what you are saying?
No, I've never said that at all. In fact, I've said that the whole issue about chronology is kind of irrelevant, Richie. I mean, for example, I did a phone consult with a patient of mine. I mean, I still see patients 2 to 2.5 days a week in my practice, which I think it's really important for people to know that. Because I get accused of not really seeing patients and not being a real doctor.
You are a doctor. I am. Of course you are. You're a proper doctor, totally qualified. Your credentials are impeccable. Everybody should know that. Absolutely. Go ahead.
But she's 72, and she's been terrified by the fact that she thinks that, she's going to die just because she's 72. So she called in and I did a phone consult with her and I said, wait a minute, stop. You're on no prescription medications. You've never taken a flu shot. You take vitamins. You're an appropriate weight. You exercise. Your chronological age may be 72, but I believe your biological age is probably 50. And the corollary to that is there are a lot of people who are 50 who are obese. They're on multiple medications. They've got heart disease. They take their flu shots every year, which we know that having a flu shot increases your risk of an adverse outcome from this virus. And so it's just an irrelevant thing. And when they say more people are dying because they're elderly, it's because they're sicker. They're on polypharmacy. They're on multiple medications. They're probably not even so much as taking a multivitamin. They don't eat well. They eat crappy food. I mean, so they are a setup for any virus that they could die from. In fact, we know from the American Lung Association stats that on an annualized basis that they say like 30,000 people die per year of the flu. Well, the American Lung Association did those numbers, and actually about 700 people die per year of influenza, and the other 20 or 30,000, it's of complications of influenza, usually pneumonia, and usually in the very old, in the elderly. So what do we need to do? We need to isolate those people, make the elderly wear masks, make them wear gloves, make people who are going to visit them in nursing homes or in assisted livings, make them protect the elderly. Let's cocoon them. Let's not shut down and smash the entire economy.
Yeah, well said. I knew that was your approach. Look after, rather than abandon the elderly, look after the elderly. But you must be getting tired of these ad hominem attacks. I think you deal with them pretty well anyway, just ignore them. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny is our guest. Let's dig down into a couple of things you said earlier. So you said there are about 30 or more types of these coronaviruses. Now here's a really important question. So glad you're here today. You should be talking to the BBC or Sky News, not to me, but thank God you're here today because you have credibility, you have the credentials, you have the qualifications. These viruses, the test being administered for the so-called deadly coronavirus, is it showing a positive if any of the coronaviruses show up? Is that true?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it, Richie?
Yeah.
It is like because when they very first started testing their screening mechanisms, where they were just screening for the presence of the coronavirus. So what did that mean? Was it one of those 32 strains that we know have been in existence for six decades? Yeah. Is it the 4 most common strains that cause illness every year? I mean, when you read the CDC website and they say that that on any given influenza season, which generally runs somewhere between August and April in the northern hemisphere, and then April to August in the southern hemisphere, if those influenza-like illnesses are not caused by influenza viruses, it's caused by something else. It looks exactly the same, but it's a different pathogen. Those influenza-like illnesses, somewhere between 20 and 40% of those conditions are caused by coronaviruses. I was writing a chapter in my new book yesterday, and I was talking about vaccinating pregnant women with pertussis vaccines. And when I was looking at the whole CDC information about pertussis, they said there are several pathogens that can cause a chronic cough disease that looks very much like pertussis. And in their list of pathogens was coronaviruses. I mean, these have been around for a long time. And so now even when they're getting IgG versus IgM finger spot antibodies, is that specific enough to be this particular virus, or does it cross-react with those viruses that have been around for a long time? That's why I say we will never, and then when they mix all those things together from different types of testing, is it a nasal swab, a throat swab? Are they testing the stool? Is it a fecal swab? Is it a blood spot? And they mix all those stats together, we'll never know the answer, ever.
How maddening is it for you that these questions are not being posed to Fauci? I mean, What you're asking now, as somebody who understands this, is fair and important. And you're looking at these press conferences. How much would you give to be able to, inhabit the body of one of these reporters to put these questions to Fauci? It must be maddening for you to watch these things.
How much would I give to bump Fauci off the stage and be standing there? That's the better question, Richie. That's the better question. Because I don't think that Trump is getting good advice. I hope that he's got somebody else whispering in his other ear saying what Fauci is telling you is a lie. He's deeply embedded in the entire industry. He has scammed the U.S. government out of lots of money, and that's Children's Health Defense put out a really, really good video about that yesterday with my really, really good friend Judy Mikovits, and how Fauci screwed her twice. She's one of the top virologists in America, and what Fauci did to her and ruining her career and bullying her. It's really important information. I mean, these people are part of the deep state. They just are.
Hey, and by the way, Sherri,
I'm hoping that what Trump is actually doing is putting them up there front and center for the whole world to see. And it's like suddenly the emperor will have no clothes and people will see them for what they really are. And pushing this whole vaccine agenda, I think that, suddenly it's coming onto people's radar screen. It's like, what? Wait a minute. They're going to forcibly vaccinate me? I've never even taken a flu shot. I don't get pneumonia shots. I'm not doing any of that stuff. But they're going to force me to get an injection against my will, to travel, to get back on an airplane, to get on a train, to go to work in my own place of employment. I mean, I think that, I tend to be a person that takes lemons and makes lemonade, Richie. I really like to do that. And I think that that's one of the good things that's come out of this quarantine is that people are finally saying, no, that's not happening to me. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, ain't happening.
Brilliant. By the way, I knew, of course, of your friendship with Judy. Judy will be with me in the second hour of this program.
Oh, so that's awesome.
That's
awesome. I didn't know that.
Terrific show today.
Back-to-back.
What a great lineup. Yeah, because Judy will get into Fauci, of course. Judy's been on with me once or twice over the years as well. But like you, not for a considerable time. So she'll be on with me in the second hour. Another eminently qualified lady with integrity, like yourself, who's got a lot of important things to say, and like yourself, should be heard on national media. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny is our guest this hour. She'll be with me till the top of the hour. Right, so you've kind of zeroed in now on the really important thing. And when you said that people are alarmed about this, I think you are right. We've seen ourselves, not just me, but one or two people I'm in contact with, a rapid increased viewership and listenership to our programs. Because I think people are looking at this now and they're hearing these rumours that they'll be required, if they want to go to a soccer game, or they want to go and watch a football game, or they want to go and see a concert at their local venue, that they might need to be immunised. They're starting to see, again, through the independent media, through people like yourself, it must be said, and Judy, they're starting to see these papers, these real papers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, suggesting that people have some sort of, vaccine that's kind of linked with some sort of not so much of a chip, but a kind of a digital tattoo that can be read by a phone or read by a computer, and they are starting to get worried about it. So let's zero in on this. Is that pretty much what you expect to see within the next few months to a year? You expect to see nations, health departments of countries saying, right, people have got to be vaccinated now. If they're not, their movements, their mobility has got to be restricted. Is that what's going to happen, do you think?
I think that's the plan. I'm hopeful that it's not what's going to happen. I'm hoping that being able for people like me and Dr. Judy Mikovits and Bobby Kennedy and Del Bigtree and Larry Pilevsky and Suzanne Humphreys and all of us will stay on the forefront of this, and because it's education and information that's going to allow the blowback, Richie. And I think that I think that they've done it in Argentina already several years ago, that you can't renew your driver's license or get a passport unless you you can have a proof of vaccination. They have shut down travel in the United States because of not being vaccinated way back in the early 1900s over smallpox. So there are precedents of this already out there. But here's the thing with Gates touting this vaccination record to prove that you're either clean, that you're not a carrier, or that you've been vaccinated, then the next logical step in the playbook is, that you might lose that piece of paper, or, you might be going to the airport and in your rush, you might forget it and leave it at home. Let's just make it convenient for you and put it in this little tattoo or put it in this little chip in your hand so that you never lose that piece of paper. And that dirty money, passing those coins and those paper things, that's dirty. That might be spreading the virus. We'll just make that convenient for you too, because they've been working towards a cashless society for a very long time. And so it just seems to me to be the next logical step in the playbook, unless people open up their eyes and they have eyes to see and ears to hear and say not only no, but hell no.
Am I right in thinking that the middle part of last year or early last year, didn't a town in New York State impose a curfew on teenagers that weren't vaccinated? That happened, didn't it? I think I read, because I follow you. I follow you anyway. You've not been on for over a year and a half, but I follow you and I share your videos and I watch them. And I'm on the website as well. I've got to mention the website again. It's Vaxter, VAXXTER.com. Did that happen? That actually did happen, didn't it, in New York State?
Upstate New York, there was a town where they quarantined the whole town over measles. And so they really were not wanting people to move around because they weren't vaccinated against measles. And so that was one of the things I saw. Now they're starting this whole thing about tracking who you've been in contact with if you're, so all of this tracking, this surveillance and tracking. I mean, for all the people that haven't read 1984 since you were in high school, dust it off and reread it. That's their playbook.
Why do you still hold some hope for your president? Now, I've known you for long enough. When this program began back in 2014, it wasn't long after that you came on. Great admiration. So I suppose we can have a disagreement. There's no harm in it. It's good for ratings if we have a big screaming match now, Sherri. So let's have one. Why do you still hold out some hope that President Trump might be some barrier to this lunatic agenda? Because I can't see him being any real barrier to it. I just see him just being another president. Why do you still have some hope for him?
Because he's the only one who has tried to keep his hands on the steering wheel, and if anybody has to take that many bullets to the head, or bullets to the chest and arrows to the back on a daily basis on a global stage and stays the course, I mean, they hate him so much that they put the oil down to minus $35 a barrel, right? They're crashing everything to get at his man who said, nope, we're holding this agenda. And everything that he's done so far, not everything, I don't agree with everything he's said or done, but the vast majority is staying the course for the good of America. And what's good for America is generally good for the rest of the world, at least economically. And all I can imagine is the opposite side of that coin, Richie. What if Hillary Clinton had been elected?
I know, but he promised to deal with Hillary. He promised he'd go after her,
We're not. It's not over yet. It's not over yet.
Right.
It ain't over till the fat lady sings, man. And I'll tell you, here's what I really think, and I think a lot of us who support the president think, is that after the next election, when we anticipate he will be elected by the biggest landslide ever, when that happens, then the gloves will really come off, because he's got another 4 years that he didn't have to worry about any more election processes or anything. That's when we believe that in the vaccine world and in the fighting the pharmaceutical industry, which is the largest, most moneyed, most powerful, and in my opinion, the most evil organization on the planet. It's the pharmakia, it's the sorcerers, of the whole pharmaceutical industry. That's when I think the gloves are going to come off.
Do you think, my opinion is, I'm obviously not American, and I've a limited understanding, I suppose, of how politics works in your country. Not a limited, probably more than most, but I don't have your understanding of it. Isn't he, despite holding the office, isn't he ultimately powerless if the body politic of your country wants to herald in this crazy dystopian compulsory vaccination agenda, won't the president, even if he is determined to oppose it, won't he ultimately be powerless to do anything about it?
Well, quite possibly, because, in the United States, the vaccination issue is a state issue. It's not a federal government issue. And I've said for quite a few years now that one of my bigger concerns was that the pharmaceutical industry, who has bought and paid all of people in Congress, they've got more lobbyists per congressional person. There's 454 people in our Congress, which is the Senate and the House. There's more lobbyists per each one of those than any other industry. And I think I read than several industries combined. And so they've got all the money that's there. And I've said for a while, and a lot of us that are at the head of this sphere have said, one of my biggest concerns is that the pharmaceutical industry will get really tired of fighting this on 50 fronts. And all 50 states, they're constantly battling all of these and trying to put forward these mandatory vaccination bills. And finally, they'll just say, enough of that nonsense, enough of it. We're going to ratchet this up to the federal level, and we're going to make this federal law. They have tried to float that federal bill 3 times, most recently about a year and a half ago, when it had 17 sponsors. It was Vaccinate American Children bill that was introduced through a Democratic Congress. And so could that happen? Could we, because of this stupid pandemic, which is a big fat nothing burger, could the pharmaceutical industry push, and Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation, could they push to get it up to the federal level? Quite possibly, but then they might have a big issue with all 50 states. They'd say, wait a minute, this is a states' rights issue, and there may be some problems there. But in each one of the states, like, for example, we have exemptions here in the U.S. We have a philosophical exemption, a religious exemption, and a medical exemption. All 50 states have a medical exemption, even though they can be difficult to get. All states except 4 have a religious exemption, which, depending on your state, the language can be difficult. We still have 16 states, and I'm in Ohio, and we are one of the states that have what's called a philosophical exemption, which means I've looked at the risk of the infection, and I've looked at the downside risk of the vaccine. I'm going to opt out. I don't want that vaccine. I'm just going to sign this little paper that says I'm exercising my right to refuse. We still have 16 out of our 50 states that have a philosophical exemption. And so it's a states' rights issue. So I don't know how that all comes into play in the issue of this pandemic. If they blow up the World Health Organization and UNICEF and Gavi, which they should, and they get rid of or marginalize the Gates Foundation, then I think the right to bodily autonomy, the right to separation of state and personal rights, it will stay intact. I mean, I've long said, Richie, that the separation between me and my government must be at the level of my skin. I must not be forcibly vaccinated against something that could kill me. It's a direct violation of the Nuremberg Codes, the Declarations of Helsinki, and the International Medical Association. We set all that up in the 40s, so how soon we forget that human experimentation cannot be allowed unless you have fully informed consent, and fully informed consent means absolutely nothing unless you have a right to refuse.
Dr. Sherri Tenpenny is our guest. She's going to stay with us for another 10 minutes or thereabouts. There's huge interest on this on Twitter. It hasn't surprised me in the least. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. You can follow Dr. Tenpenny on Twitter as well. I'm putting links up there. It's a busy BUSY Dr. TDRT on Twitter, and on Instagram it's Dr. Tenpenny, Dr. Tenpenny, all one word. Huge interest in this. There really is. Again, we're back to the media. It's to me, to have Bill Gates, whom is a software developer, ultimately, going on national television in the UK, suggesting that it's a good thing, or maybe a necessary thing, to expedite the vaccine, to get it out by sometime in September, and to indemnify the manufacturer, whoever that is, against any litigation later on. That's, to me, that's patent, and I'm obviously not qualified to talk about medicine. I don't know anything about it. It's insane, isn't it?
It's already in place in the United States, Richie. I mean, in 1986, they passed the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Act, which gave complete liability and immunity protection to the drug companies for childhood vaccinations. But they had a caveat. that they said if you got a vaccine and you got either injured or you were killed, you could apply to the Federal Court of Claims for compensation. They do think that less than 10% of people even know about it, and of those people, only 25% actually get compensation. But the U.S. government has paid out $4.2 billion with a B in injury compensation claims to injured parties who in the United States have been injured by a vaccine. In 2003, they introduced something called Project BioShield. Project BioShield provides an indefinite permanent funding for any drug or vaccine that is made during a declared national emergency. They started with $5.6 billion. The last time I looked, they've been putting $10 billion in that pot every few years just to keep it replenished. And then in 2005, they passed the PrEP Act, which is the Preparedness Act, which now takes it even further, that any drug, vaccine, biologic, any chemical, anything that they make, any technology that they make during a declared pandemic, which our government said, yes, on March the 17th, we are going to activate the PrEP Act. So now the drug companies can come in, suck all the money out of that Project BioShield, all the money that they want, and they can make any vaccine that they want and put anything in it that they want. And even if it kills you, you have zero recourse unless you can convince the U.S. Attorney General that the vaccine manufacturers actually did it under willful intent to kill you. Now, good luck with that.
That is
insane. So where Bill Gates gets this idea is it's already happening in the United States. He just wants to make it be able to protect all of his cronies and all of his companies that he's invested in and all of the manufacturers on a global basis. So everybody in the UK, China, India, South America, Africa, if they do this and they have complete liability protection from all lawsuits, from every sort of thing, nefarious thing that they could do, that's what Bill Gates is asking for. And he's using it from a model that's already in place in the United States.
Isn't it sickening that during that appearance on BBC television, they didn't ask him about India and the 500,000 children who were very badly injured there, through testing of one of his vaccines there. Unsurprising, but absolutely horrible. Let me ask you this in the time we have left. You are a physician. You are a qualified lady. Your credentials are impeccable. I'm going to say that again because we have a lot of people listening to this and they're very new to this information. What about vaccines? Can they be useful and can they be manufactured safely? Could they be of some use to people?
I don't know how they possibly can be. When you look at what the actual ingredient list is, Richie, I think that a lot of people don't understand what is coming through that needle. They really don't. They think it's just and I think that a lot of physicians don't even understand it. In fact, for years, I was a board certified emergency medicine physician. I was the director of a level 2 trauma center for 12 years. Yeah. And even during that period of time, I knew nothing like I know now. All my vaccine odyssey started after I left the ER. And I thought that what was coming through that needle was a little attenuated or weakened virus or a little piece of bacteria and some sterile water, and that was it. So what was the big deal? We don't understand that there's 205 different chemicals. If a child is fully vaccinated from birth to 18 years of age, they have almost 12,000 micrograms of aluminum injected. They have over 500 micrograms of mercury injected. They have 4 known carcinogens injected. They have cells from cow blood and chicken fibroblasts and eggs and dog cells and insect cells. We don't understand that they have formaldehyde, polysorbate 80, 2-phenoxyethanol, Triton X100, ethylene oxide. All of that stuff is in those vaccines. It's not all of that stuff isn't in one vaccine, but if you get the full gamut of multiple doses of 17 vaccines, you're going to get doses of all of those things that I just mentioned and more. And so it's not possible to take a virus, grow it in an animal tissue, extract it out, completely purify it, weaken it, so that all you have is this little virus and some sterile water going into a vaccine. It's not possible.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you again. I heard you loud and clear, and you gave a brilliant answer to that. Could it be done without those horrible carcinogens and heavy metals and toxins that don't have any place in the human body. Well, they shouldn't be put into the human body deliberately. Could antibodies of something not very nice be introduced to somebody safely to help their immune system build up a better resistance? Could it be done without all the crap that's so dangerous? Excuse my language.
In a word, no.
No. Is that right? Why not?
And here's the other thing, Richie. Why do we think we need to do that? Why are we so horrified of a fever, a cough, a rash, and some diarrhea, which is mostly what these childhood infections are? Why don't we support children with good nutrition, with vitamins, with homeopathy, with getting to bed on time? And yes, washing your hands. I think that is one of the good things that came out of this. We don't need to wash our hands obsessively like they're telling us to do now, but just, consciously. Why do we have to inject something to do something that we think that they need? They don't need any of it. They don't need any of it.
So when they say, because again, your critics will say all the time, they will say polio, they will say smallpox.
And whenever they say smallpox or polio, my short answer to them is your ignorance is showing. You know nothing about what you're talking about. You're just parroting the party line.
Wouldn't it be nice if we made time when things calm down a bit to talk about that?
I would love to do that.
Especially that subject, because, I like you because you're very humble, and you know that there are people listening to this program, and you know that tomorrow somebody who is very new to the information will come across Vaxxter.com. It'll be their first time, and they want to understand this, and they've been watching their evening news and they've been getting their info from the same sources forever, so they believe that vaccines have cured polio and have helped with tuberculosis and all these other things, and they intrinsically believe that. So it would be nice if we made some time in the near future to go through that and maybe give people a second look at history, because I think it might be very helpful.
Well, and the word you just said right there is operative. That's operative is believe. I have a really good friend, Robert Scott Bell, and his radio show. He always says that people, vaccination is a religion, and they want to bow to the church of medical mysticism, meaning that they believe that this is going to do something for them, and they believe it's something that's good for them and necessary and harmless and safe and effective. It's none of that. None of that. And after 40,000 hours and nearly 20 years of my life researching this, and I can stand on that solidly, Richie. And the reason that I kept going deeper into the rabbit hole was because I thought that sooner or later I would find something that made sense. Right. Sooner or later I would come up with an answer and say, yes, now I get it. Now I get, this is why we vaccinate, and this is why we must do this, and why this is good. But the truth is, the antithesis is that has happened. The more I know, the more I stand on the conviction that this entire industry, we need a complete moratorium on this, because safety's never been proven. Keeping you from sick, it doesn't. And it can give you chronic illness, chronic disease, and even kill you.
The media is our enemy, isn't it? Because I don't know when it stopped. I don't know when it came to a grinding halt. But there would have been a time when I would have been watching US TV. Now, I'm originally from Ireland, obviously. I'm in the UK now. But we started getting US TV channels, I suppose, around about the early to mid-90s, in terms of getting access to US TV channels. And I was very interested in daytime television at the time. Successful daytime television. We laugh now when we think of Ricky Lake and Sally Jessy and Montel. We laugh, but they had very big audiences. And what they did was they would have found you and put you on the stage against some high priest of, vaccination, some guy who believed in it, and they would have left you go head to head. But it doesn't happen anymore, Sherri. This is a tragedy, isn't it?
It very much is, because we've tried to set that up several times, several times, and 3 times in the last maybe year and a half, that we've tried to have a panel of me and my compatriots and any of the pro-vaccine people on stage, fully moderated. You were given the questions in advance. You were given adequate time. Nobody was going to step over top of each other. It was just like, here's my side. Here's your side. Now we play it to an audience and let the audience decide. And every time we have done that, they have refused to show up.
Yeah, I know.
And
that.
so what does that say? You know, I mean, if you were the biggest pro-vaccine person on the planet, wouldn't you love to have an opportunity to put your boot to Sherri Tenpenny's neck publicly in front of the world? But yet you don't show up because you don't want to debate because you say there's nothing worth debating. I mean, what kind of cowardice is that?
They won't even debate somebody who hasn't a clue. I've had them come onto my Twitter and, you know, scorn, try to shame me for speaking to people like yourself. And I've said, well, I'll tell you what then, why don't you come on with me and I will gather the arguments from Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, from Robert Kennedy. Okay, he's not a doctor, but I'll get all this stuff. And
he knows the science.
He knows the science. And I've said to these people, I will put these things to you, and then if you want, then you can try to shoot them down. And in the end, they backpedal so quickly out of the room. You can't see them for dust, and it's dreadful. And I don't take any pleasure in that. I think it's horrible. I wish they wouldn't do it. I know you're not triumphalist. I know you're not. You want these people to stand on a stage with you. I know that. But yet they just won't do it. I want to give you the final word. Before I do, please get on the email list at Vaxxter.com, VAXXTER.com, if you're a parent or a would-be parent. I'm not telling you what to do. I wouldn't dream of it. Sherri Tenpenny is not telling you what to do. She wouldn't dream of it. But arm yourself. Hear from another doctor, another real doctor, who says, hang on a second, stop and think before you do it. Go to Vaxxter.com and hear all sides of it before making your decision. Dr. Tenpenny on Instagram and Busy Dr. T on Twitter. 45 seconds. Sherri, thanks for coming back today. Godspeed to you. All the best to you. You have the final word. Go ahead.
Well, I just think that people just have eyes to see and ears to hear and know that what you're being told has an agenda. And look and pull the curtain back just a little bit. Do your own investigation. We've done the work for you. The other website, if you go to courses4mastery.com, courses, the number 4mastery.com, you'll see a list of all my different properties and all the different educational things that we do in terms of Vaccine U and our boot camp and the library and all the things that we have created for you. And a lot of it is free. Some of it is paid. That's how we pay our bills. But a lot of it is free. If you go to courses4mastery.com, and please join us. Please join the fight. We need every single person in this battle, or we're going to end up just all be microchipped and be beholding to the Gates Foundation.
Please come back again real soon, Sherri. Thanks so much for your time today. Brilliant having you on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richie. My pleasure.
Brilliant stuff. That was Dr. Sherri Tenpenny live on the Richie Allen Radio Show for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. And Judy Mikovits, Dr. Judy Mikovits, will be on the programme in the second hour. Good to be with you, live from Salford in Greater Manchester. This is the Richie Allen Radio Show, broadcasting live on Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, triggerwarning.tv, my website, and the TuneIn radio app. We'll take a tune from Queen, we'll come back, we'll get the news headlines from London, and then, as I said, Dr. Judy Mikovits will join me as well. Lots more to come. Do keep tweeting us. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. This is Freddie. I want to break free from Queen. 2.5 minutes past 6 it is. I should say 2.5 minutes past the hour. I know people are listening all over the bloody place. You could be listening anywhere. Let's go to FSN in London for the headlines. I'm not sure anything startlingly new has happened since we came on air at 5 o'clock, but we'll check it out anyway. Over to FSN.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Giles Gibson. US President Donald Trump has announced he's suspending all immigration to America to try to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, governors of Democratic states in the US are asking the president to encourage people to stay at home after a series of protests against restrictions. And oil prices have dropped again after a historic sell-off for the commodity on Monday.
Thanks, Giles. Good stuff. Nothing startlingly new there. You are with the Richie Allen Radio Show. It is live, of course, as always. It's archived, the programme, on Spotify, Podomatic, iTunes, lots of other places that I'm not even aware of. Dr. Judy Mikovits is standing by the way, will be with me in a couple of minutes' time. You do not want to miss her. Before we do that, though, let's have a listen to this.
Renowned healer Mark Bayersky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Bayersky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markbayersky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
The views and opinions expressed on The Richie Allen Show are those of the guests and the guests alone. They do not necessarily reflect the position of the host or other contributors. This is The Richie Allen Show, the most listened to independent news radio show in Europe.
Right, welcome back. Judy is standing by and will be with me in a minute. A lot of tweets came in there when Sherri was on. That's Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. If you want to see what people were tweeting, it's worth your while to do that, because people tweet me links to videos and to articles. Some of them are useful, some of them are not, but you'll be the judge of that. I won't tell you which are and which aren't. But you just need to go to twitter.com, and where it says search Twitter in the top right-hand corner of your screen, put Richie Allen Show, all one word with no spaces. So write Richie Allen Show, press enter, and then you can see what people have been tweeting me during the programme on any given day. All right, it's warm in studio. It's warm in studio, I don't mind telling you, this afternoon. Big reaction to Samantha Baldwin coming on the programme last night. Big reaction to it. If you missed that conversation, it is a startling story. It is an extraordinary story, okay, about one woman's battle to see and to be reunited with her sons. It's on the YouTube channel, it's on Podomatic, it's on iTunes. Do check it out and do share it. Okay, let's get Dr. Judy on the phone. Again, do tweet and do chat amongst yourselves on Twitter about the information you are hearing today. It's been quite a while since Dr. Judy Mikovits was on this programme. Like Dr. Sherri Tenpenny earlier on, Judy is an eminently qualified lady with a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. We first met Judy to talk to her about her book and her experience of trying to, I'm going to say, blow the whistle on the fact that many sufferers of ME and chronic fatigue were actually suffering because they were exposed to man-made retroviruses. The implications, of course, of that were absolutely huge, and certain people didn't want that information to be made public. She was even harassed and hassled and arrested and accused of manipulation, but none of that stuck. And she wrote a very, very powerful book about that called Plague, One Scientist's Search for the Truth. You can find that online. I do recommend that you read it. Let's just welcome her back to the programme. Dr. Judy Mikovits, you're very welcome. Thanks for coming back on. How are you?
I'm doing well, Richie. Thanks so much for having me back on. It's been a while.
It has been a while, yeah. And Dr. Sherri Tenpenny said earlier on, she said, Judy Mikovits. I've often referred to you on radio shows and when I've been speaking to my friends as Mikovits, but I was getting it wrong. It's Mikovits, is that right?
No, it's actually Mikovits is how my parents say it, but Mikovits in Austria, where many of my relatives still live, including my dad's brother's son. So they say Mikovits in Austria and Mikovits in the U.S., and I answered either.
Brilliant. I got it half right then for a change. It
exactly.
It's a real pleasure to have you on, because there is a dearth. There is a big hole in the media, isn't there? In mainstream media, in commercial media. We are being told by people from the Imperial College in London, we are being told from people connected to the CDC that the lockdown is necessary. The damn Chinese kept the secrets from the world. We have to keep people locked down. We have to bring a vaccine in. We're hearing from all these so-called experts, but at the same time, qualified, articulate, educated people like you are not being heard, at least not being heard anyway, on the mainstream media. So it's very important, I think, that we do it. Obviously, Dr. Fauci, when I said that you were coming back on the programme because you are widely known, people said, Richie, ask Dr. Judy to talk about the man who's advising the Trump administration. And of course we will do that. But I first wanted to ask you, Judy, on a human level, what's your reaction to the lockdown? The effect it's having on people individually, on their families, the effect on the economy, the fear that's in people, the bewilderment that people are expressing because this has come out of nowhere for them. What's your own personal reaction to that?
It's similar to that. It's really anger, not fear. It's anger, and it really is directed to our government officials because this virus SARS-CoV-2, while yes, it's clearly engineered and has engineered or manipulated is a better word because we don't say engineered when you're just growing viruses in other animal cell lines. They acquire new infections. They pick up other dormant infections because viruses, I use a paper, viruses rarely travel alone, meaning you need more than one virus to cause a disease. So I'm so angry because they've locked down the absolute worst measures. Wear a mask. Anybody who cannot get oxygen, it's clear this is an oxygen deprivation issue. And the viruses don't float through the air with the greatest of ease. They're testing a piece of RNA. That's not an infectious virus. So every measure that's been done by our federal official, by our Health and Human Service officials, led by Tony Fauci, is exactly wrong, and he knows it. He knows this is not, yes, upper respiratory infections can spread, by, influenza viruses, flu viruses, but to lock down a beach, to lock down a world when it's clear that not, most people who are infected with this virus are not getting sick. And the very people that are getting sick, the elderly, the people with co-infections with other inflammatory diseases, those are the ones who are most severely impacted. My husband, myself, you can hear from my voice, I have a lung disease since birth, since I was born premature many years ago. I always get pleurisy under stress. I can't wear a mask. My husband has COPD. He's 81 years old. You don't lock an 81-year-old man away from his grandchildren and keep people away. We've lived with these people forever. The fear, the anger of people who look at you when you don't have a mask on as if you're going to hurt them when the only person the mask is hurting is them. So my reaction, my human reaction that I've worked very hard to control over the last decade, I should say 4 decades, as I've watched more and more corruption. That's why our second book is called Plague of Corruption. What I experienced in the first book was nothing compared to what I experienced in the last 5 years since the first book was published in November of 2014.
And there will be links, of course, on social media. We'll ensure it where people can find your books. Dr. Judy Mikovits is our guest this hour. Before we talk about Anthony Fauci, one of the things I get asked all the time when I do speak to somebody qualified as you are, and Sherri in the first hour, was how could they get the testing so wrong? First of all, could you explain in the simplest terms that you possibly can, Judy, for me really, as much as anybody else, why you believe the testing for this virus is so flawed? I mean, at the moment you will know that UK politicians, from every party are singing with the same voice. They are all saying we need to test everybody in the country, or 100,000 people a day. We need to test. Now, I know that you and others like you believe that the test itself is flawed. Why is it flawed? Why? Or how? Even?
Well, the test that's being used, first of all, is called PCR. It's polymerase chain reaction. You don't need to understand those words. But what PCR does is, so that what they're doing is they're going back in your nasal pharyngeal, in your sinuses, in the back of your throat, and they're scraping a few cells, which the epithelial cells there, those are the cells that first encounter coronaviruses. So, and upper respiratory infections, of which there are hundreds of causes. And so they're amplifying a zillion times a fraction, let's just say, a very small piece of the virus. And they're finding, and then they amplify it a zillion times and they say you're positive or you're negative. Well, every single animal has many, many, many coronaviruses. And you can get a lot of, when you amplify these viruses using PCR in the laboratory, and you amplify them a million times, over the 2 or 3 minutes of the testing, you'll break apart the chain 30 seconds, and it takes like a half hour to do the test in the lab. Well, it's very easy when you amplify something a million times for that amplified product to go through the air and things and contaminate surfaces. So it was discovered in January that the reagents that were used in the test were contaminated, that our Centers for Disease Control here in the U.S. was using a contaminated test. The other thing about that is it's so easy to get a false positive. So you'll get false positive if the reagents are contaminated, but you'll also get false positives if there's if people, which there are many coronaviruses so they can be amplifying another coronavirus and be calling it the SARS-CoV-2 because they're not amplifying unique sequences. They're amplifying conserved sequences to coronaviruses. And we know this particular virus has HIV sequences in it and other sequences in it. So they're not looking for the thing across, and there are some changes in that virus that make it more infectious. And they're not looking across those regions. And of course, we don't even know what they're looking across because independent tests, which are made, I know that the Koreans and others were using independent tests independent of the company, developed by private companies, which weren't contaminated and which incorporated all the stringency that I mentioned. And people who used the most rigorous and stringent of those PCR tests actually had better results as far as controlling the epidemic, and then actually realizing what was COVID-19 associated with a SARS-CoV-2 infection, and what was another upper respiratory infection that may have had the same inflammatory signature or response of a cough and a fever. That's hundreds, if not thousands of things. So that PCR test isn't intended and wasn't intended by the inventors of PCR to use diagnostically. And we know that. And what should have been done is to use what we call serology testing, looking at the blood for antibodies to the virus. Because when the blood, not the back of the throat, not RNA in your nose, and again, this is another reason why the mask is ridiculous, because if you have to amplify a piece of RNA, that's not a whole virus. That doesn't have the envelope around it, the little circular things you see on all the cartoons with the spike protein. It's just a piece of RNA. That's not a virus. We have millions of different pieces. So I could take that PCR and show you a microbial pneumonia and say, oh, that caused COVID-19. Or I could show you any one of several strains of influenza. Oh, that caused COVID-19. So it was very quickly said, only this virus can cause COVID-19, which is far from the truth, and we can talk later. But that's, if you test for antibodies, you know exactly who's been exposed, number one. If it's IgM, all mucosal surfaces have different antibodies, made by the cells that patrol the various B cells that patrol the immune cells that patrol those surfaces looking for infections. And they say, and they have the immune cells amplify and they make an antibody to that immune response. That's vaccinology 101. That's what a vaccine's intended to do, make an antibody. So IgM means a recent infection. IgG means a past infection. And if you have an IgG, you have immune memory. That is, you're immune. You're in effect vaccinated. You saw the virus sometime in the past. Your immune system responded. You may have gotten a mild flu or an upper respiratory infection. You may be totally asymptomatic, but you have a memory. So the next time you see that pathogen, so your immune system cleared it by definition, and it's either not there by PCR, or even if you have a current, PCR or positive thing, if you have an antibody, you're by definition immune.
It's very interesting, Judy.
Carrier.
It's very interesting you saying that, because back at the beginning of all of this, the national media here spoke to an academic from Manchester. And amazingly, he echoed at that time what you've just told me now, that there were problems with the test, that it could be redundant as an exercise, the test, for the same reasons you gave there, the false positives. And he suggested the only thing to do was the antibody test that you just explained to us there. He hasn't really been seen on the media since. And what's startling about that is, now we've got World Health Organization spokespersons doing the media, even today, saying that we are now beginning to believe that even if you had a coronavirus, that you won't have built up an immunity to it. And we might come back to that, because that's very, very serious. But let's talk.
It's very, very serious. Absolutely.
Hugely serious, because people like me who did basic biology in high school, which is all I did. I did biology in high school. It was the only science I took. And, I learned about the body becoming immune to viruses, building up antibodies. I learned all about that. So my ears certainly pricked up. Dr. Judy Mikovits, PhD, biochemistry, molecular biology, former government advisor. A woman very, very highly regarded until she was brave enough to say that she believed that chronic fatigue sufferers and sufferers of ME might have been exposed to man-made retroviruses, and of course then all hell broke loose. This is a lady whom for many, many, many years people in positions of power would have listened to until she had the temerity to say something they didn't like. We're talking to Dr. Judy Mikovits here, okay? She's earned the right to have her opinion. Now, who is this Dr. Tony Fauci guy? Because on the face of it, he's eminently qualified. But if he is, surely he should know that the testing for coronavirus is fundamentally flawed. But just before you answer that, a number of my listeners, including a journalist called Spiro Skouras, who's a friend of mine and an occasional contributor to this programme, Spiro wants to know, before we talk about Fauci, he says he wonders if the throat swabbing and the nasal swabbing is really about getting people's DNA on record. A very sly way to do that. A lot of people suspect that. What do you think?
Regardless, what I think is, and what I've advised everybody is, do not do that test. Do not agree to that test. Do not agree to any test. I don't even want to agree to the antibody, to the serology test, because of what you just mentioned before, when in the previous discussion, is because, the government has now twisted the serology test, literally changed basic immunology to say, that doesn't mean you're immune. That means you have a later stage of disease. You're more likely, you're spreading the virus. You're a healthy carrier. No, that's not how coronavirus infections go. Your immune system clears them. And if you have an antibody, the next time you're infected, you will make a very quick memory response the next time you're mentioned. So they're like, well, we have to make a vaccine for the next wave of immunity. So it's like, no, you're not going to tell me I'm not immune. You're not going to test. So no test whatsoever. No, you're not getting my DNA. You're not recording which infections I have, which infections I don't have, because, this is what this lockdown is. This is, we're going to take away your freedom over your own health, over your own body. We're going to tell you you're a threat to public health. You are not. I'm not a threat to my husband. I've been sharing spit with him for 20 years. We're good, thank you. Or the rest of my family. And this is what it is. And so we, as a population, no, you're not going to control us. You're not going to keep a record of who we are. You're not going to put on our driver's license whether or not we're vaccinated or immune to this or that. So that's how I feel. I'm sure they're collecting data on us. They have for decades, and that's why I won't participate in any kind of healthcare, health insurance, or anything, and never have.
Yeah, you and me both. I don't have your credentials, but I feel just as strongly as you do about that. So Dr. Tony Fauci, then, he surely knows that which you know. I'm not saying that he's a better scientist than you. Far from. I'm not saying that at all. But he's a qualified man, and he must know this. Yet, this isn't what he's telling. Clearly, he's not telling this to the president of the US, Donald Trump. Why? Why do you think that is? Who is Fauci, and why isn't he telling Trump, listen, Mr. President, the test is worthless, really. We shouldn't be doing that. Why isn't he telling him about the silliness of wearing the masks? Why isn't he telling Trump that, look, the lockdown's ridiculous, Mr. President, we should look after people that have got pre-existing conditions, really look after them and make sure they're okay. Keep them indoors maybe for a little while, give them loads of vitamin D and vitamin C and healthy food, and everybody else should go about their business. Why is Fauci not doing that?
So who is Tony Fauci?
Yeah.
So he is... he is a medical doctor that has been the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. That's one of the 20 or so institutes in the National Institutes of Health. It's probably the most powerful one next to the National Cancer Institute. So he's been that since at least 1984 when I first encountered him as a 25-year-old, protein chemist working in the National Cancer Institute. So I wasn't working for him. I was working for the National Cancer Institute when our laboratory, Dr. Frank Rossetti, who discovered human disease-causing retroviruses, we were part of the team that confirmed Luc Montagnier's isolation of what he called lymphadenopathy virus, LAV, from people with AIDS, the very first acquired immune deficiency syndromes, the gay men, the IV drug users, the prostitutes back in the early 80s. What Tony Fauci did then and has done for the next really 35 years or more is patent various treatments, various vaccine strategies, delay treatments in HIV, delay testing, the appropriate testing, or direct or collaborate to delay with others like Robert Redfield of our CDC, like Robert Gallo of the NCI, delay the treatments. Sorry, I got to turn off the phone.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's live radio. Dr. Judy Mikovits is our guest, author, PhD, qualified woman. We're talking about Dr. Tony Fauci. Go ahead, Judy.
So what he did then was delay the appropriate testing from getting to market, delay simple non-toxic drugs like at low doses, as we had developed peptide T with Candace Pert and again with Dr. Setti. And I say we because I'm a 25 to 30-year-old lab technician. I didn't get my PhD to 1991, but in fact at the time it said that we were targeting the wrong cells. We were using the wrong treatments, and we had no evidence of that then. But when one considered that HIV infected only 1 in 10,000 T cells, it made no sense that all of them were dying. So it said another part of the immune system and another approach needed to be taken. And I only learned 30 years later that Tony Fauci held the patents and continued to held the patents for interleukin-2 therapy. And Dr. Frank Rossetti also discovered interleukin-2 as in the National Cancer Institute. So why does Dr. Fauci own the patents for interleukin-2 therapy? So for almost a decade, many people died because Tony Fauci used the wrong treatments. So since that time, he's been in that position, driving pandemics by contaminated, dangerous vaccines, and by directing things towards his patents. And that hasn't changed in COVID-19, where GP12041 GAG HIV sequences have been found in the most pathogenic strains. So who has the patents on these things? Yeah, Tony Fauci.
No, I've looked this up, right? Because what my audience expects me now to jump in there. And but I've in preparation for you coming on today, I looked this up, and I just want to say that everything you've said there is borne out by documentation that I've come across today, and it isn't documentation on conspiracy theory websites, folks. It's in the it's in the mainstream. It's in national newspapers. You've just got to look for this stuff. So the question begs, how could he get away with that? How? Why hasn't somebody come after him?
Well, I honestly don't know, because it begs the question, or it shows you what's happening right now. It's clear as day he's doing the exact same thing on no data and shut down the entire world. And how many people, as you mentioned in the very beginning, will die or have their entire lives ruined because nations listen to the WHO and Tony Fauci, the interaction with the World Health Organization. Thankfully, President Trump finally shut American tax dollars from going to that organization, which clearly has been collaborating with the Chinese. Tony Fauci's NIAID funded at many levels, probably these Wuhan studies to do gain of function, teach viruses to infect cells they can't infect. That's a gain of function study, whether you engineer it to do that or whether you simply passage it through, continuously grow it in in viro E6 cells that were used from our government's biosafety level 4 at the U.S. Army Research Institute of Infectious Disease. That's again, the CDC, the military controlled institute that's at Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland. It's pretty clear in our book, Plague of Corruption, where we even have pictures of it and show its juxtaposition to the National Cancer Institute. I worked there doing those studies in 1999 with Ebola, trying to understand why some strains kill people and others don't, and develop those disease signatures back in 1999. So, of course, he knows all of this, and he's funded the Wuhan study. So it's not just the Chinese communists doing this to it. It's Tony Fauci. Unbeknownst to anyone, our taxpayer millions, tens of millions of our taxpayer dollars in multiple studies. And these data are coming out every day showing how they've driven this pandemic. And, why is he above the law? Those gain of function studies were against federal law in the United States starting in 2014 and suddenly ended in 2017. I'm not sure why. And yet the entire time, Tony Fauci is funding studies between American laboratories at North Carolina in Harvard, and Wuhan, China. So why is he above all federal law, and why isn't he in prison charged with crimes of humanity, literally for the rest of his life?
I'd love to argue with this. I'd love to challenge it. I'd love to ask for proof, but it's all there, folks. You basically just need to do a Google search. You might have to use Bing. You might have to use DuckDuckGo or whatever. But if you Google search that, you will find it's all true. I can't challenge this. Fauci, who's advising the President of the United States, has funded, has been the center point, the front man for the funding of these experiments into getting a virus, training a virus to attack cells that it otherwise wouldn't. Now that's a big ethical soup there, a minefield for ethics, I would have thought, because, well, that's a weapon and this guy's supposed to be a doctor. He shouldn't be doing that. But we'll come back to that in a minute. So Fauci's doing this, and I've done a little bit of digging of my own volition, because I could use references from you, Judy. I could use references from Sherri, Tenpenny, or from anybody else. But I did my own work. I don't like my work to be prejudiced by anybody else. And as far as I can understand, that funding, he got money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, didn't he? A lot of money.
I also investigated that independently.
Yeah.
And saw that to be true.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, so Bill and Melinda Gates and their partners in Google Ventures and DeepMind and all the rest of it, they're researching how to get viruses to attack cells that they wouldn't ordinarily attack. That isn't medicine. That's war, basically. Yeah. And there's no other way of getting around. Now, a number of my listeners have said, Richie, you better mention to Judy that it appears that Fauci had a crisis of conscience back only a month ago. Because apparently only a month ago, and he did say this, he said that COVID-19 may ultimately be more like a seasonal influenza, a severe one, with a very low fatality rate, rather than comparable to SARS or MERS. Why has he changed his opinion?
Yeah, he actually published that with Cliff Flame and Robert Redfield in a very prominent journal, the New England Journal of Medicine, on February 28th. Why has he changed his opinion? I mean, there's no data to support it. In fact, data that came out today says the fatality rate in over, large numbers is 0.1 to 0.2%. To drive the economic shutdown. This shutdown should have never occurred. This lockup, this removal of people's rights, because the evidence is that people are immune and there's no need for a vaccine. No need for a vaccine. No vaccines have ever been successfully developed for SARS or MERS. They drive the lung pathogenesis and the death in those cases, and no vaccines ever been successfully developed for retroviruses. So the HIV component, now this SARS-CoV-2 has the ability to infect the spleen, infect cause the same damage that HIV does, the development of AIDS, and we see that clinically, a rapid AIDS. So, if that's being driven by the vaccination program, the influenza vaccines, clear data that the influenza vaccines are driving SARS-CoV-2 infections with the more pathogenic and crippling the immune system and leading to the most severe responses. So I can't answer the question of why. The only thing I ever come up with is that's pure evil.
It's evil. And a number of people are posing the question on social media. Not posing the question, but they are hypothesizing. They are saying that the virus is really only the excuse to do a number of things. One, to crash the economy deliberately, because ultimately when you have an economic crash, real wealth goes one way. It's a big transfer of wealth to those that have already got most of the wealth anyway. But others are saying that the virus is just an excuse to roll out programs, which I discussed with Dr. Sherri Tenpenny in Hour 1, and that is mandating vaccines. This horrible twilight zone. Is that what you think, Judy?
Correct. So they haven't been able to push the agenda on the elderly who have, like me, like my husband, who have had, natural immune health, never had vaccines, don't have, cancers, diseases, doing just fine. Thank you. We appreciate what immunity really is and what health really is and how healthy foods. So this clearly, as Sherri Tenpenny says, is driving this vaccination program. Oh, we're not going to let you out of your house until you get a vaccine. I beg your pardon. Nobody elected you to change the United States Constitution. But driving the fear and the economic destruction, people will do anything to save their families. Okay, give me the vaccine. How bad could it be? Well, it will kill you. And this is the point. And the trillions that's being wasted when we have simple therapies, just as I mentioned all the way back in AIDS, the trillions that have been HIV/AIDS have been spent since then to develop a vaccine. Nothing ever works. Just, forcing this on societies, testing things right now, without informed consents, driven by fear. We hear, the mayor of New York City, my lab is open, or my city is open as a laboratory. Come get your shots. And I said, oh my God, just line up and get on the trains. This is the Holocaust.
Did you ever think you'd be saying that out loud? I mean, no. Somebody, coming from that, I don't want to say mainstream background, but you know yourself, Judy, you're an incredibly smart woman. We've always looked up to people like you in society. We have, we've always aspired to be people like you. Our parents and grandparents are very proud of people like you, scientists and academics and PhDs and you were the people. You wanted our sons and our daughters to hold those positions, to hold those qualifications. And I think, did you ever imagine? I'm shaking my head here now, thinking a woman of your standing to be saying these things. And the reaction you'll get from, I suppose, most people who live around you and, who share your neighbourhood, who live in your state, because they only get their media from one or two sources. They will listen to that and they will say, she's nuts. And you must think to yourself sometimes, wow, it sounds nuts. Because it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's extremely tough to be in this situation. And in fact, you mentioned my neighbors. Why don't you just start with my own family? And so the last decade that I've been isolated, and silenced while the XMRVs, the human gamma retroviruses, spread through, not only chronic fatigue and autism, spread through families, by the vaccines, multiple vaccines contaminated with multiple gamma and other kinds of retroviruses, and even human endogenous viruses that in other humans are extremely dangerous. When injected, they don't have to be infected. So yeah, I don't say it on the street. It's very difficult to watch. Every time I see, a 90-year-old woman walk past me, because we live in a area that has a lot of elderly people, as my husband is 81. And she's got a mask on, and she's walked every day down that street for the last, let's just say, 50 years. And she never had a mask, and she's beautiful and healthy and walking down that street. All I really do, I never say a word. I just stop where I am and I pray to God that doesn't hurt her or cause her any added stress or immune suppression. Wearing those masks are horribly immune suppressive. I don't say these things to out loud. I say them now out loud because when you say a statement that profound, it wakes people up and they listen and maybe that, yes, they may say she's crazy, but not after reading Plague of Corruption, not after looking beyond and seeing what other countries have done, not after the simple common sense of wash your hands. Viruses don't spread through the air 6 feet on a beach where there's a 20-mile-an-hour wind by somebody who's not coughing. Healthy people don't spread disease. And so the only agenda you can come back to, as Sherri Tenpenny just discussed, is this: we're going to vaccinate everyone. And this is, and the rhetoric the last decade that I've been looking at this is the vaccinated actually shed the viruses, like those getting a live attenuated polio or shot, or a shot for influenza every year. Those people should be wearing the mask because they are spreading those viruses. And to think our healthcare workers are getting that shot and then going and treating a patient, not wearing a mask in many cases. And if they are wearing a mask, they're amplifying an infection in their own system and rendering themselves sicker. And yet what we hear is your unvaccinated child is putting my child at risk. Well, if your vaccines work, which they don't, then why are you worried about my child? And I think where the anger comes is because they didn't do their homework and look deeper than what the government was telling them. They didn't ask for an ingredients list for the vaccines. They were mandated in their job and they said, oh, well, I have to, instead of find another job. Or instead of, so when all of this was done to me in 2011, all I had to do was sign an apology, a confession, and say, I'll spend the rest of my life doing honest research. And I've spent my entire life doing honest research. And I'm sorry if the data cause you the inconvenience of your, of your conflict of interest of your vaccine is extremely dangerous. Your vaccines, your untested program of more than 36 years. This is a detonate switch. COVID-19 is the people that are going to be most severely affected are the most vaccine injures, the ones who have been injected with the most contaminated live viral and other vaccines full of aluminum and mercury that cripple those immune cells necessary for response. It's kill them first, call it COVID-19, and nobody will figure out what happened.
Did it break your heart? I mean, there you were, a woman doing a job that she loved, excited about it, you know, science, searching, you know, kind of breaking horizons, looking for information, testing. And you come across, you find, you and your colleagues, you discover something that has got profound consequences for human health. And you're doing your job. And I'm talking about, of course, ME and chronic fatigue. And you do that and you bring that to the public domain. You bring it to the attention of people. And then you get attacked the way you did. I'm guessing you never expected that you would be retaliated against like that. That must have been heartbreaking, that, for you at the time.
Yeah, worse than heartbreaking. It's you know, and then removed from all of science, you know, removed literally from life, isolated, made a pariah, and worse than that, when the studies continued to show us to be right. That last association study that Francis Collins directed Tony Fauci to do a large multi-center, you know, blinded study across the appropriate populations. When he directed Ian Lipkin and literally kept me out of any laboratory to do that study, used the wrong patient populations. Clearly, in our first book we wrote, you wouldn't have isolated or found HIV because you would have eliminated all gay men, IV drug users, and prostitutes in the early 80s. So you can't, you know, so to do that and then went against all odds because I woke up in the middle of the meeting on November 4th, 2010, when we were planning the studies, and I could see how they were going to design the study to fail. There was one cohort at Stanford University led by Jose Montoya, and that cohort snuck through the study. It became the last cohort of about 400 people, controls and patients. And I was doing virology by phone. Dr. Rossetti was getting 80% positive, just like the data from the confirmative study on our original isolation by Harvey Alter and Shai-Xing Lo, their PNAS paper, which they were forced to withdraw. So here we are with ours was forced retracted while I was held in jail. That was fun. And in a rare move, the journal. So not only did they do what they did to me, but they engineered the study to be false and then put our names on the study. When we found them positive, Tony Fauci stopped the study, said, "I'm tired of wasting money. It's clear that's contamination." No, there was no evidence of contamination in any of the studies, not in my study, not in Harvey Alter's study, and not in that study. So he stopped the study and directed Ian Lipkin to apply a statistical analysis to it, implying that the positive samples were contamination, and then, you know, put our names on that paper when we vehemently opposed, saying, "Don't stop the study," you know, and we don't know anything about statistics because you either have a virus or you don't. I've never used a statistical program. It's lies, damn lies, and statistics in Frank Rossetti's world. We don't do it. You have data, you have raw data, and the raw data tell the truth. So for that study to come out and people say, well, you co-authored the study, you're the second person on the paper that says you found nothing in your own, and no, nothing could be further from the truth. We didn't find that. And the patients, I mean, what happened to the patients now for a decade? How many have died? How many have continued to suffer, being called crazy? They're not sick, being denied the treatments. Again, Tony Fauci, Ian Lipkin, and those two people right now are funding. So for that study, Ian Lipkin was paid $34 million in grants to develop a new center. And that center funded the Dr. Barrick and the North Carolina laboratories working with the Wuhan, and published a paper in 2017, which one of the patients, my friend Robin, showed me Sunday night. And that paper talked about the very mechanisms of epigenetics that were my paradigm shifting work on how HIV damages the immune system, and silencing it would change everything. So not only did they destroy the career and the lives of millions of people, at the time in 2011, it was 3 million and 17 million worldwide, but they stigmatized them with the "you're not sick, you're crazy," and then took my work, locked it all down, took my computers, took my data from my entire career, have my data, and now they're using it in COVID-19 to deny people. Once again, it's beyond comprehension, and yes, it's heartbreaking, and it would be devastating if not for the support of people like Dr. Tenpenny, the entire community, Dr. Wakefield, our Children's Health Defense, and Bobby Kennedy Jr., the patient populations who never, ever, ever gave up on me. Without that, it would have been devastating.
I can't add anything to that, so I won't. I want to say to our listeners, if you go to the usual online book stores, shops online, you'll find Dr. Mikovits books. You'll find them there. Again, I'll put links out to them. I'll get Raj to put links up later on. You can read the entire story in the first book, the first plague book. And I recommend you do, because when we spoke a few years ago for the first time, you were kind enough to make sure I got a copy of the book. And it's as clear and concise a story as I've ever read. And again, while reading it, I was juxtaposing what I was reading with information that was in the public domain, and it's all true. In the 60 seconds that it is all true. In the 60 seconds we've got left today, I think you've already answered it. But what keeps you going? Most people would have given up, and it has occurred to me before. I don't want to be sensational, and I don't want, to be alarmist. I'm amazed that they didn't try to kill you, to be honest. I mean... Oh,
they did.
You believe that, do you? Because I've heard this, over the years. You believe that they tried to knock you off.
Oh, yes. It's in Plague of Corruption, the new book. The very first chapter is Scientist at Sea. And I literally escaped on a boat from one attempt. There are several attempts listed, and the scientists who were suicided or killed. Oh, absolutely, they do. When you go to these dark places. And I've not read
the sequel, you see, and that's why I said I've heard this. I've heard that you've had this sort of interference. Because I remember when I read Plague, I thought it's what they do. Because I met a former mercenary in Spain some years ago, and he'd been arrested in Angola in the 1970s. He was a mercenary, he was well known, and he told me that contract killers today in the world, they get most of their business from corporations. And he was very adamant about that. And of course he wouldn't come on the air with me. He wouldn't even appear if I was to alter his voice, none of that. He said, Richie, the corporations these days, they do a lot of business with former SAS guys, former CIA guys, and they bump off people for corporate reasons. And when I was reading Plague, and the first time I spoke to you some years ago, we've spoken 3 or 4 times now, I thought, I can't believe they didn't kill her. And
we like to say God has a sense of humor.
Well, I hope so, Judy. I think you're absolutely amazing. Is there an online resource? I mean, I've got all the links. I can direct people to the YouTube channel, of course. Is there one resource that you'd like people to go and look at today online?
Well, we have our website is plaguethebook.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at Dr. Judy A. Mikovits.
That's Dr. A. Judy Mikovits on Dr. Judy A. Mikovits on Twitter, and it's plaguethebook.com. I do strongly recommend that you read the Plague books. I've got to read the follow-up. I never read it. I read Plague as preparation for you coming on. I don't know if it's the second time that we spoke, but I will pick it up. Thanks for coming on, Judy, today. I really appreciate it. And good luck to you. And don't be a stranger. And when there are developments, please do get in touch with me, and we'll always make room for you on this program.
Thank you, Richie. I'll do it. Always best to you and everyone who's listening. We can. The reason I go on is I know we can cure these things. We've done it before.
Thank you, Judy. The wonderful Dr. Judy Mikovits, live on the radio this afternoon, Tuesday, the 21st of April 2020. That's the end of the programme today. Thanks again to Judy and to Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, who was my guest in the first hour. Appreciate their time today. Thanks to you for listening. I'm out of here now. We'll get this turned around as quick as we can for the YouTube and Spotify and Podomatic and all of that. Back with you tomorrow at 5 o'clock as usual with the Richie Allen Radio Show, live on the usual platforms. We're going out with this. Somebody has a birthday today. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye now.